You never think it's going to be you. You never imagine that one day you'll be staring at a photo of a baby growing inside another woman, and that the father of that child is the same man you kissed goodnight just hours earlier. My name is Julia, and this is the story of how I found out my husband was going to be a father, just not with me. It started with a phone. His phone. Buzzing on the kitchen table late one night while he was passed out on the couch. I picked it up to silence it and saw an image I'll never forget. An ultrasound, 16 weeks along, with a caption that said, "He kicked again today." I stared at the screen. Frozen. It didn't make sense. We didn't have a child. We couldn't. We'd tried. We'd cried. We'd sat in doctor's offices together, side by side. So who was she? And why was she sending my husband updates on her pregnancy, like he was the one waiting in the delivery room? But here's the part that might surprise you. I didn't wake him up. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. Instead, I smiled. Because in that moment, something inside me clicked. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a plan. A precise, public unraveling of every secret he thought he could hide. And it would all begin at our anniversary party. If you're already gripping your seat, if you've ever suspected something wasn't quite right, but couldn't put your finger on it, hit subscribe now. Like this video if you believe in exposing the truth with dignity. And leave a comment, would you have confronted him right away or waited for the perfect moment? Like I did. Julia didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table with his phone in her hand. Every text message from Emily K. burning through her like acid. She scrolled through photo after photo, a bracelet on a wrist she didn't recognize. Restaurant receipts from weekends. Tyler said he was working late, hotel confirmations hidden in email folders. She wasn't even sure what she was feeling: anger, betrayal, sadness. It all blurred into something colder, something quieter. It wasn't just cheating. It was manipulation. He'd looked her in the eye, told her she was his world, all while building another life behind her back. And now that other life was kicking, growing, alive. He thought he was careful. He thought she'd never find out. But he made one mistake. He underestimated her. And soon, he was going to regret that more than anything else he'd ever done. Julia didn't cry the next morning. She got dressed like any other Friday, made coffee, fed the cat, and kissed her husband on the forehead as he sat half asleep at the kitchen counter, completely unaware that the woman he was smiling at now knew everything. She told him she had back-to-back meetings and might be home late, and he nodded. Distracted. Scrolling through his phone. It made her stomach turn. That same device held every lie, every betrayal, every detail of a life he was building with another woman. But she said nothing. Not yet. Because Julia wasn't the kind of woman who exploded. She was the kind who prepared. And what she needed now was information. At her desk, between emails and Zoom calls, she started searching. Emily K. That's all she had: a name, some photos, and a feeling. It didn't take long to find her. A public LinkedIn profile, marketing executive, mid-30s, blonde, bright smile. Julia recognized her immediately from a company conference Tyler had spoken at last year. She had been there. Julia had even shaken her hand. The idea that Emily had looked her in the eye, smiled politely, and then gone on to sleep with her husband made Julia's blood run cold. Still, she stayed composed. She wasn't here to feel. She was here to verify. She scanned Emily's profile, her public Facebook posts, her tagged photos, and then there it was, a check-in at a private OB/GYN clinic 3 weeks ago, the same clinic from the ultrasound. Julia's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. This wasn't guesswork anymore, it was fact. That weekend, she told Tyler she was going to visit her sister 2 hours away. He smiled, kissed her cheek, and said, "Have fun." She drove 10 minutes down the street to a hotel instead. From there, she opened a new email address, set up call monitoring software, and downloaded every backup from Tyler's iCloud she could access. The man hadn't even bothered to disable syncing. Within hours, she had voicemails, call logs, deleted texts, even audio recordings automatically saved from their smart home assistant. She played one back, barely breathing. It was his voice. Soft. Low. "Don't worry," he was saying. "She doesn't suspect anything. Just a few more months, and we'll figure everything out." Emily's voice replied, "I hate hiding. I want us to be real." Then Tyler again. "We will. I promise." Julia stared at the wall. Fists clenched. She didn't know what was worse, the betrayal, or how natural he sounded lying through his teeth. But still, no tears, no rage, just clarity. She had the evidence. Now she needed the opportunity. She looked at the calendar. Their 12-year anniversary was in 2 weeks. He'd already booked a venue, sent invitations. There would be speeches, family, friends, all eyes on them. It would be perfect. Not for celebrating, but for unmasking everything. By the time she checked out of the hotel, Julia had screen-recorded all the text messages, printed out key conversations, and saved multiple copies to drives stored in separate locations. She contacted a lawyer, not to file yet, but to prepare. She even visited a private investigator just to confirm what she already knew, and with every step she took, she felt herself growing stronger. This wasn't going to be a confrontation. It was going to be an unveiling. A calculated, controlled implosion, and Tyler wouldn't even see the fuse. She returned home Sunday night with takeout and a smile. Tyler greeted her at the door, kissed her like nothing had changed. Julia looked into his eyes and wondered how many times he'd practiced that face the warm, loving husband while texting another woman behind her back. But she didn't blink. She handed him a drink, made small talk, and told him she was excited about the anniversary party. He smiled, relieved, and said, "I think this year is going to be really special." Julia nodded. "Oh, it will be. It definitely will." The week leading up to their anniversary was a masterclass in patience. Julia smiled through it all: dinner conversations, casual touches, his offhand compliments about how radiant she looked lately. He had no idea he was praising a woman preparing to destroy his double life in front of everyone he knew. While Tyler sent final headcounts to the venue and confirmed the playlist with the DJ, Julia was preparing something else entirely. She wasn't just going to confront him, she was going to let him walk right into it, willingly, smiling. She started by creating a short slideshow. It was a tradition in their circle highlight reels of vacations, birthdays, weddings, the kind of nostalgic mush that made people cry happy tears at anniversaries. Tyler thought it was a great idea. "It'll be sweet," he said. "People love that stuff." Julia nodded. She compiled photos of their travels, their home renovations, silly moments, sweet ones. She even added their wedding photo at the end, just before the final 3 slides that would turn everything on its head. The first of those final images was the ultrasound full screen, with the date and the name of the clinic. The second was a blurred-out screenshot of one of Emily's messages: "He kicked again today. Can't wait for you to feel him too." The third, a black screen with white text: "Truth doesn't hide forever. Happy anniversary, Tyler." She tested the file 3 times, then copied it to a flash drive labeled with his initials. She placed it inside a small envelope and slid it into her handbag. Her heart wasn't racing, it was steady, cold, controlled. This wasn't revenge. This was revelation. 2 days before the party, she called her sister. Olivia. Fierce, loyal, blunt, the one person Julia knew she could trust with the full story. They met at a cafe, and Julia laid it all out, from the ultrasound to the slideshow. Olivia sat in silence for most of it, fingers laced tightly around her coffee cup. When Julia finished, Olivia leaned back and said, "You sure you want to do this like that?" "Publicly." Julia nodded. "He used my body as an excuse for this. For years, he said we were a team, even when we couldn't have kids, and now he's got one, with someone else. And I get to be the fool in pearls Olivia didn't push further." "Then I'll be there. I'll make sure no one interrupts you. He deserves this." Tyler, meanwhile, was busy playing the doting husband. He ordered her favorite cake flavor. He practiced his speech in front of the mirror. Julia caught him once, and he blushed like a teenager. "Don't laugh," he said. "You'll cry when I read it, I promise." She smiled. "I'm sure I will." The night before the party, Julia stood in their bedroom, staring at her dress, cream-colored silk, with sleeves that fell just past her wrists. Elegant, understated. She slipped it on and turned slowly in front of the mirror. She looked calm, composed. Nothing about her said woman on the edge. Tyler passed by the doorway and whistled. "Wow. If you look half as good tomorrow, I'm going to fall in love all over again." Julia met his eyes through the reflection and said, "Then you better not blink." He laughed, kissed her temple, and walked away. Julia kept her gaze locked on the mirror, watching herself not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a woman who finally held the truth and had the power to do something with it. The evening of their anniversary arrived with all the polish and perfection Tyler hoped for. The private room at the upscale venue sparkled with soft lighting and gold-accented table settings. Waitstaff moved effortlessly between candle-lit tables, and gentle jazz played overhead. Guests arrived in waves, friends from college, co-workers, family from both sides, all offering hugs and smiles, remarking on how beautiful Julia looked, how charming Tyler was, how lucky they were to have found each other. Julia thanked them all, her voice warm, her hands steady, her heart steel. Tyler beamed as he worked the room, giving toasts with champagne in hand, playing the loving husband role flawlessly. He even slipped in behind Julia at one point, wrapped his arms around her waist, and whispered, 12 years, and you still take my breath away." Julia smiled over her shoulder. "Let's make it a night to remember," she said. He had no idea how right she was. When everyone was seated for dinner, Tyler tapped his glass gently. "If I could have your attention," he began, "I'd like to say a few words." Julia watched him from across the table as he launched into his rehearsed speech. It was sweet, predictable. He thanked Julia for being his rock, praised her loyalty, joked about their home renovations, and spoke wistfully about their future, about what's still possible. Julia thought she might be sick, but she didn't let it show. When he finished, the room applauded warmly. Then Julia rose to her feet. Her voice was calm, smooth. "I'd like to show everyone something. A short video, just a little collection of memories." She nodded to the AV tech she had paid, personally someone Tyler didn't know. He dimmed the lights, and the projector hummed to life. The first few slides were exactly what everyone expected. Photos of Julia and Tyler through the years at the beach, laughing with friends, holding hands on a snowy sidewalk. There were collective awe-s and chuckles. Someone near the back dabbed at their eyes. Tyler leaned toward Julia, grinning. "This is so sweet. You made this." She nodded without turning to him. Then the screen went black for a beat. The next image appeared slowly. A grainy, unmistakable ultrasound. The room went quiet. The date in the corner read just a few weeks ago. There was a pause long enough for confusion to start forming around the edges of the room. The next slide followed, a screenshot of a message, only partially redacted. "He kicked again today. Can't wait for you to feel him too." A few people gasped. Tyler's smile faltered. Julia could feel the air shift, tension thickening with every second. Then came the final screen. White text on black background, truth doesn't hide forever. Happy anniversary. Tyler. A wave of silence swept across the room, sharp and complete. Tyler turned toward Julia slowly, eyes wide. What is this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Julia stood beside him, hands clasped loosely in front of her, eyes steady. "That," she said clearly, for the whole room to hear, "is your other child, the one you made while I was trying to save our marriage." Murmurs rippled through the guests. Someone dropped a fork. A woman across the room clapped a hand to her mouth. Tyler stood frozen, blinking as if reality hadn't quite landed yet. Then he said, the thing cheaters always say when they're caught in a crowd. "Can we talk about this privately?" Julia didn't flinch. "You weren't very private when you created the problem. Why should I be private now?" Tyler's face had drained of all color. The room, filled with people who had once toasted their love, was now dead silent. Julia stood calmly beside him, shoulders back, voice even. "You've been having an affair," she said, projecting her voice without shouting. "With a woman named Emily. She's 16 weeks pregnant, and I wasn't supposed to find out." Someone at the back of the room whispered, "Oh my God." Others sat in stunned silence, forks frozen mid-air, glasses untouched. Olivia, standing just inside the doorway, took a few slow steps forward, arms crossed ready to intervene if needed. Tyler tried to laugh it off, a panicked chuckle that sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Julia, this is crazy. I don't know where this is coming from," but Julia cut him off with a shake of her head. "Don't. I have screenshots, voicemails, location data, recordings from our smart home device. You weren't careful. You thought I wouldn't look." He looked around the room, as if searching for a face that might rescue him, someone to step in and say this was going too far. But all he saw were the same wide eyes and parted lips. People weren't just watching, they were absorbing every word. The story was becoming legend right before their eyes. "I thought about confronting you privately," Julia continued. "But then I remembered how you looked me in the eye every night and told me we were in this together. I remembered how you held my hand at doctor appointments when we were told we couldn't have children. I remembered how you made me feel like less of a woman because I couldn't give you something you already had. With someone else." Tyler opened his mouth, but no sound came. He looked utterly lost. That's when a voice rang out from the side of the room. "Wait, Emily, who?" All heads turned. The question had come from a tall brunette in a navy blue dress, Tyler's co-worker Rachel. She stepped forward, staring at him. "Emily Knight," she asked. "She's the intern from last year's West Coast project." Right, blonde, quiet. Julia's lips pressed into a tight line. "Yes," she said. "That's her." Rachel turned slowly back to Tyler. "She told me she left the company because of a complicated situation, said she was tired of being hidden." Now the murmurs were louder. People looked at each other, shaking heads, folding arms, drawing conclusions at a rapid pace. No one was looking at Julia with pity anymore. They were looking at Tyler with disgust. Olivia finally stepped beside her sister. "You want me to play the voicemail?" she asked quietly. Julia shook her head. "No, that's enough. They've heard what they need to hear." Tyler stepped forward, voice trembling. "Julia, please, we can talk about this. I can fix it." Julia didn't move. "You didn't break a vase." "Tyler, you broke a person." Her voice stayed low, but it carried. "You didn't just cheat. You lied to my face. You built a family somewhere else while pretending I was your home." He tried to reach for her hand, but she stepped back. "I already filed for separation. The paperwork will be on your desk Monday morning. The bank accounts are frozen. The house is in my name. And just so you know, the flash drive with the messages, not the only copy." He stood there, stunned, hands falling to his sides. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked, sounding like a boy who just lost his ride home. "You might try Emily's apartment," Julia replied coolly. "She seems to think you'll be around for the baby shower." There was a brief silence. Then someone near the buffet, possibly Julia's old college roommate, clapped. A single, sharp clap that broke the room's tension. Then another joined. And another. In seconds. The party was applauding not out of celebration, but out of sheer awe. Julia gave one final look at her husband, No. Her former husband then turned to Olivia. "I'm ready to go." Olivia nodded. As they walked toward the exit, Tyler called out one last time, voice cracking. "Julia, please, don't let this end like this." Julia turned her head slightly. "It didn't have to end like this. You chose that a long time ago." Then she stepped through the door, her heels echoing like punctuation marks behind her, each one louder than anything Tyler could ever say. The silence after the storm was the hardest part. There were no more dramatic texts, no confrontations, no long arguments spilling into the early hours. Just space. Empty space. Tyler moved out the following day. Julia didn't ask where he went. She already knew. She never said his name again in that house, not out loud, not even in her thoughts, if she could help it. She changed the locks. She threw out the sheets. She repainted the bedroom. In the weeks that followed, the shock began to settle into something deeper, not grief. Exactly, but a kind of hollow relief, like walking away from a fire you didn't start, but kept feeding without realizing it. Her body still moved through familiar routines: morning coffee, late meetings, grocery lists, but her mind was freer than it had been in years. She could finally hear herself think. People talked. Of course they did. Some were shocked. Some pretended they had seen it coming all along. But no one, not a single person, blamed Julia, if anything. They watched her with admiration. Women at work started inviting her to lunch more often. Her neighbor offered to walk her dog when she saw her looking tired. Olivia, true to her word, checked in daily at first, then weekly, then only when she knew Julia needed it most. Tyler tried to reach out first through texts, then emails, then a letter. He said he was in therapy, that he was confused, that he'd never stopped loving her. Julia didn't respond. She read the first message, ignored the rest. She didn't need to hear his remorse. It would never be equal to what he took. Some wounds didn't need closure. They needed silence. And Julia had found peace in that. She kept the house. It had been hers, legally and emotionally, for a long time anyway. But she made changes. Big ones. She turned the guest room into a studio and started painting again, something she hadn't done since college. She bought herself a new couch, slept on one side of the bed for now, but with no weight of guilt beside her. She smiled more. She breathed better. She walked lighter. Months passed. Fall turned to winter. One evening, as the first snow began to fall, Julia sat on the porch with a blanket around her shoulders and a cup of tea warming her hands. The same porch where she used to wait for Tyler's car to pull in late, where she used to wonder what excuse he'd offer next. But tonight, there was no waiting, no guessing, just quiet, soft, and clean, like snowfall before it settles. A car pulled up across the street. A woman stepped out with a stroller and waved politely. A new neighbor. Julia waved back. This time, genuinely. She had no need to pretend anymore. Later that night, she texted Olivia a simple message: "I didn't think I'd get here." But I did. And she had. She had survived the betrayal. Not just the affair, but the kind of betrayal that makes you question your worth, your instincts, your whole life. She had walked through fire, and instead of burning, she had melted and reshaped, stronger, sharper, clearer. She didn't know if she would ever love again. and that was okay. What mattered now was that she loved herself enough to leave, to let go, to rebuild not just the pieces of what broke, but something entirely new. Sometimes. The greatest revenge isn't about anger. It's about becoming everything they said you'd never be without them. Happy, whole, free.